Okay. Hello, Patreon subscribers and Year of Polygamy podcast listeners. We are here doing a weekly video, and I have some good friends with me on the podcast. One of them has been on the podcast before, and you probably recognize her name, Leslie Olpin Peterson. Leslie, can you say hello?
Hello.
And we also have a good friend of mine, Brian Walker, and if you don't know him, you soon will. You've seen his work. He designed the logo for the Year of Polygamy podcast. Brian, can you say hello?
Hi.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the logo today because the logo is significant. We're not just going to explain why the logo for Year of Polygamy, but we're going to talk about the project behind the logo. And we've had Leslie come on before and talk about her artwork. She is actually the artist featured in the logo. And then Brian has sort of graphically designed the logo. Is that the correct term?
Sure. Remixed. Made a thing with all the things she made.
I like it. Okay, well, first, Leslie, why don't you, for people who might not have heard that episode, and those are people that are not going in order on the podcast and who are in big trouble, will you tell us about your project and what started, basically why you're here?
Okay. Well, like most people, I had heard that Joseph probably had multiple wives, but I wasn't sure because we had never talked about these women in any of our church meetings. And I remember a dear friend, Linda Newell, who wrote Mormon Enigma, the church tried to silence her when she talked about polygamy. So I was really confused as to whether Joseph did or did not practice polygamy. And when the essays came out, it really affected me. I felt really bad that the church had hidden these women from us, and that's when I started researching them. And what I did was listen to your podcast, and I decided with each woman that I would hear you talk about, I would paint them. I had just started painting about a year ago, or a year before this, and I thought, well, this is going to be a fun way to practice my art skills. So as I started painting these women, I just fell in love with Mormon history and these women, and that's how it started.
Okay, so this is the best part of the story for me, is that you picked up painting like a year before, and then next thing you know, your artwork is in the New York Times. It's like all over the news. How many pressings have you done?
I don't know. I've done one with Radio from Hell, Bill, and then you. And I've done probably 9 speaking engagements to different groups, and then have been interviewed by Huffington Post, New York Times, Fox News. Quite a bit.
It's so great, and I want to talk about your next project in just a minute, but do you have some examples of your work you can show everybody?
Well, I do. I've got the most popular one is my poster. Can you see that there?
Yes, we can see the poster. So the poster has Emma Smith, and it's surrounded by all the other wives of Joseph Smith.
Right. And I'm using the 34 women from, I think that's what you used, Lindsay, and also Todd Compton.
Yes.
Oh.
Do you have a favorite portrait?
Zina was always my favorite. And
show us her. Is she on can you show us on the poster?
Yes. Zina, sorry, this is awkward holding the phone. There's Zina. So she was one of my favorites until I heard a quote from her where she said that love isn't really necessary. It's about obedience and throwing love under the bus. And that kind of got me all messed up. Now I think I need to find a new favorite. So.
Okay, so, and just for people to know, you sell prints of these. So you have a calendar out, which, do you want to show that right now? Let's show the calendar.
Yeah, I have the calendar, and this is Lindsay from back in her early days. It's called Not Your Average Church Lady, and I'm honoring women from the past and present that I admire. And yes, and I'm selling them on my Etsy shop. It's called the Pink Papaya Shop.
So I only really brought you here to show that I was a cover girl, to brag that I was a cover girl to everybody. So that's why you're really here. No, the calendar is great, and you feature quotes from the different women on it, and it's just really, really, really great. Some of my favorite people are on there. And you have some, I'm trying to remember, is it Emma Smith? You have some women that are no longer alive, right? Don't you?
Yeah, I've got Emma there. I've got a woman from Wyoming who was a legislator, kind of a mover and shaker back in Wyoming. I have Patty Sessions in there as well, and her great granddaughter Paula Eldridge. So a few from the past, but most of them are current.
And like you said, that you are really into history now. You're doing a lot of research. It's not just painting, it's painting, but research as well.
Right. I am addicted to Mormon history and polygamy. Yeah.
Yeah, and Leslie's great because she is like me. She's at all the fun Mormon events right now, so you get to run into her and see her stuff. Okay, so Brian, let's talk to you for a minute. Why don't you tell us who you are and a background on what you do?
Okay, so I think my background will seem less awesome compared to Leslie's. I, by day, am a fire sprinkler inspector at the University of Utah, which is a job that I just kind of stumbled into after studying at the University of Utah. I have a bachelor's in English. It's really come in handy for me while inspecting fire sprinklers. But in my off time, photography and art and music have been kind of a passion of mine since I was, in high school. And so I've been doing photography since I was a teenager and through my life to varying degrees of professionalism. I had a stretch where I shot weddings and bridals, engagements, that kind of stuff. But music is really where a lot of my artistic endeavors seemed to take me.
Wait, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were musical. That's something else we're going to have to use up for you.
I'll see if I can do anything that you would like.
That's how we met. Brian took some portraits for me, and he took some really great headshots. And you're a graphic design artist, but music, when you say music, what are you into? What do you do?
What I do myself is a very niche genre, to be kind. I make ambient, atmospheric instrumental music. And that's something that I used to play in a post-rock band, kind of along the lines of Explosions in the Sky, who do the music for Friday Night Lights, is probably where you've heard that type of music before. But after that kind of faded out, I started making just very ambient, very lengthy atmospheric tracks, primarily to help myself with anxiety and insomnia. And that's something that I started doing kind of my last year of college. And so with my band, with the stuff that I've been doing kind of since then, the past few years, I make all of my own album covers. And that's kind of what got me thinking, when you posted that you were looking for somebody to work on some sort of design for this, I was like, probably won't be mine that makes the cut, but I just want to see what I can do for her. I want to see if I can come up with something that Lindsay likes. So
I want to show the logo in just a minute, but tell us where we can find your stuff. Like, can people find your music?
Yes. So my My project is called Sea of Evenings, and I am on Bandcamp. I've got a handful of releases there. It's just seaofevenings.bandcamp.com. And yeah, it might help you sleep. It might help you chill out a little bit if you also have some anxiety. And it's something that I just try to make music that doesn't demand your attention and just kind of lets you kind of zone out.
Well, that's great. That's such a cool thing to know. I want to talk about the logo now because you did volunteer to do this. So both of these wonderful artists volunteered their images for free, which I'm very grateful for. So tell us about what you did with the image first, Brian, and then we'll have Leslie kind of talk about who's in the image in the logo. And I'm trying to share my screen to show it, but it's not letting me do it. So I don't know what that's about. But go to yearpolygamy.com. You can see it right there. It's the pink logo.
So yeah, my initial idea when I sat down to try to come up with something was I really wanted to overlay a lot of the faces. I wanted to convey this sense of oneness, kind of show a similarity and a contrast between the women that I had never learned about. And I picked some of the faces that just stood out the most to me when I was looking through Leslie's work. And so in the first draft, which was a little bit more yellow, the images were a little more fuzzy. But I had 6 women kind of overlaid in that image. There was Louisa Beeman, Elizabeth Davis Durfee, Sarah Ann Whitney, Martha McBride Knight, Patty Sessions, and Helen Mar Kimball. And that version kind of didn't really do the best job, but it conveyed the idea. And so the second go around, which ended up with what's on the screen right now, Helen Mar Kimball kind of didn't make the cut on that one. I tried because that was one story that I was really familiar with after my research. And so I was a little disappointed that I couldn't make her work in the image. But yeah, it was one of those things where a lot of trial and error, just layer it and kind of see what happened, and then either advance or retreat from that point on.
Let me tell you why I liked this logo. First of all, you used Leslie's art, and that was something that I really wanted, was to incorporate her art into it. Yeah. And then, I mean, you took it in a direction that I would have never thought, but what I thought was really interesting about it is that it sort of obscured the faces by blending them all together. And some would argue that polygamy does that, right? You know, women sort of get lost in this mix. And yet it also, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's haunting, it's confusing. And I think that it's really demonstrates what I've learned in this podcast, which is just when you think you're getting a clear picture of something, another story comes in and sort of disrupts it and blurs the lines on what you think that you knew. And so that's why it really spoke to me. Leslie, do you want to talk about how you feel about the logo? You're muted. You got to unmute.
Sorry, there you go. Can you hear me? Shoot. I got a phone call. So, can you hear me, Lindsay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got a phone call and I had it on mute. No, exactly what you said hit me too. The confusion, and in fact, yesterday I was looking at Brian's work, And I couldn't even identify all 6 of them. They were lost in there. I could find Martha, Sarah, and Louisa. And so just what you said, they get lost. These women, anyway, it's beautiful. And the sadness in the eyes really touched me too. I mean, I love this piece so much. And yeah, that's about it.
Brian, we had talked about, did you decide if you're going to sell prints of these?
I think we're good with it. We haven't figured out kind of the logistics of that, but that's definitely something I want to keep talking about.
Okay, do you guys have any other thoughts on the logos before we talk about before we let you plug whatever projects you are doing and then let you go?
Sure. I think my main thought and feeling on it was just it was a great experience for me putting it together, because I got to spend that time kind of looking very closely at each of Leslie's paintings that I was using, and looking these women's stories up. And then, yeah, through that process of obscuring them, kind of feeling a sadness. Because as I was learning about them, I was simultaneously burying them. And so I would reach these places in the process of layering everything that everything would just get too lost. And I'd be like, no, but I want to see her eyes. Like, I want to see some semblance of that face again. And so I would back up and try to keep that balance of kind of distorted and lost, but still findable. Like, if you look long enough, like, I'm glad that Leslie can still see a few of her painting specific faces in there. That's what I want. I want you to be able to see the details. I want you to see the women, even though at first glance you can't.
Leslie, do you want to talk?
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I love the piece, and I think Brian and I need to get together and make prints and get them out there, because they're beautiful. It's beautiful.
That would be amazing. Let's definitely do it.
Okay, when you do that, we'll post a link and we'll have Year of Polygamy subscribers and supporters purchase those. And Leslie, I do want you to talk about your latest art project that you did, because I think that that's relevant too.
Oh, great. Well, at Sunstone, we showed our project for the first time, and it's the 56 Wives of Brigham Young. I've had so many people ask me if I would paint them, and I said, no, I have no desire to attempt a project like that again. But then I kind of got this idea in my women's group, in the Waka group, and I put it out there and asked the women if they would be interested in painting one of Brigham's wives and learning a little bit about them. And I put the message out on Facebook, and within just a couple days, we had 56 women commit to being a part of the project. And then we had a waiting list of those that wanted to get on. And it turned out to be a real meaningful project for most of the women. They did the research on the women and connected and felt like as they painted her, they felt a sisterhood with these women in the past. So it was a beautiful experience. We are taking it to Green River in a couple weeks and displaying the project down there. So I hope we get it around a little bit, because it really was I thought it was a beautiful project.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool too. So I'm glad that Sunstone got to debut it. It was really cool to have, and I think it will go places. So I love the concept of it, and I love the art. Well, thank you guys. Thank you again for coming on to explain the logo for everybody. And I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, Lindsay. you, Brian.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks, Lindsay.